Good afternoon, friends, family, loved ones, enemies. This is Kevin Lewis on the Blueprint. And I'd like to thank a couple of y'all that showed up already, Didi and Teresa. And today's show is called Inventing Black Folks. And where I got this from, or what sparked the idea of doing the show about inventing Black folks, was I was talking to someone earlier in the week, and they were telling me about a show that was coming up, or that they saw. And the name of the show is If There Weren't Any Blacks, You'd Have to Invent Them. And it was created by a playwright, an English playwright by the name of John Speight. And he's pretty popular at that time. He's passed away. He was born in 1920, and I think he passed away in 1991 or something like that. But anyway, back in 1968, they made a show, and it was called If There Weren't Any Blacks, You'd Have to Invent Them. And when I heard that title, it just put a lot of ideas in my mind. Like, what the heck is that? Like, what does that mean? And naturally, I thought, I'm like, well, that's like racist. You know, why would you say something like that? So when I looked at it, I brought it up on YouTube, and I looked at the show, and it's a foreign, kind of cheesy show. But what Johnny Speight, as he likes to be called, he was a anti-racist, anti-racism, classism person. So a lot of his shows, what he would create is he would make the person that's racist, he would go overboard to make them seem, you know, silly, their logic and whatnot. So that was his purpose. So then I'm going to get away from that show, whatever, because it's not really about that. But it's just all the things that went through my mind, or that can go through our mind, if we just think about that. If there weren't any blacks, you'd have to invent them. And thinking of an old saying, they say that necessity is the mother of invention, which means if you need something, it's imperative that you create it. That sparks people to invent things when they need something. So I was thinking about black folks, not I purposely say folks, black folks, in America. And I want to make sure that I'm making that point, that I'm talking about in America. And why would it be necessary to create black people or black folks, especially in this country? And what actually has happened, they have invented black folks. And what made it necessary to create these black folks? Why would that be ideal, to create black folks? And I'd like to thank my man Hadoon for showing up also. And what the answer that I was coming up with and thinking about from my perspective on this, things that was going through my mind. What we have here in America is a paradise. We have a paradise for the dominant culture. You know, they've created an oasis here in America where white supremacy is the dominant culture. Even for those people that say, even white people that say they don't believe in white supremacy, they still let it exist. And I like to thank Gwen also for showing up. They still let it fester. And I'm going to use the word fester because fester is like septic, that's infected, you know, something that becomes infected. It's festering. And that's what white supremacy is. It's a system where it's festering in this country. And a lot of those people that claim not to be racist or bigoted, they still allow it to fester. The government allows it to fester. They allowed the Ku Klux Klan to exist without trying to break it up or exterminate it. All these white supremacist organizations, they allow them to exist. So this paradise is not for us, per se, but it's for those that created the system. There's a paradise that exists for them, where white privilege exists. And for white supremacy and white privilege to exist, you have to be able to cultivate it. It has to be able to thrive, and it's thrived over the centuries. And it's not on a decline. So to be white in this country is like a paradise. But the paradise, and I'm looking at it from a from black vantage point, we don't think of this place as a paradise, but we play an intricate part in the paradise. The paradise that exists for them is full of goldfish and flamingos. And I'm going to get into why I'm using goldfish and flamingos. There's a reason for that. But for white privilege and white supremacy to exist in this system, you have to have help. Or for it to exist the way it has existed, you needed help. You have to have someone that's accepting their role. And it seems like that's what we've done. And if we didn't exist to accept that role, they would have to invent someone to exist to accept that role. Someone that will acquiesce to their part in the system. This system that exists for the oppressors, this paradise that exists for them. We have to acquiesce. You have to have someone to acquiesce for it to be such a lovely system that exists from their vantage point. And what we mean by acquiesce, that means to accept something reluctantly, without protest. And even though you might say, well, black people do protest, we protest, yeah, but our protests we have weak protests. I'll put it like that. We don't stand in our strong points. We don't protest in strong points. We protest, we march. It's sort of like a parade. You know, we let somebody know we're upset. And this is the reason I was saying goldfish, because what happens is an incident or an event or whatever will happen. And a lot of us will get angry. I'm not going to say most of us. I'm going to say a lot of us will get angry. We'll protest, put up a fuss, and then we'll forget. And what they say about goldfish are supposed to have a short memory. They say goldfish memory span is like 5 seconds or something like that, which isn't really true. It's probably about 3 months, but nonetheless, that's the reputation that a goldfish has. It's supposed to have a 5-second memory span. I remember talking to a friend of mine when I was saying that. I was like, you know, this is a paradise full of flamingos and goldfish. And we were having a conversation about flamingos, and I'm going to get into that. But what I was thinking about is goldfish. And I was telling him he didn't know the correlation or the analogy with the goldfish. And I was saying, they say a goldfish memory is like 5 seconds. And he said, you know, that's probably right, because I had an Oscar, and I used to feed him goldfish. And I put a bunch of goldfish in a bowl. And what happened is the Oscar will attack one and eat one. And they'll freak out. The rest of them will freak out and go to the other side of the tank. Then a few seconds later, they just act as if nothing had happened. And they'll venture back over there, swim back over to the other side of the tank, where they're acting as if nothing has happened. And then another one will get attacked. And that's like what my analogy is for us, for black people in this paradise that's made for white supremacy. Something will happen, whether it's Tamir, Trayvon, Sandra Bland, Eric Gardner. I mean, the list of names goes on, and they continually go on, Marquise Jones. But then after a while, it doesn't matter. Everybody just, they get in a little uproar, and then they relax, and they go about their business. And they go about the business of continuing their part in this system. You know, they'll protest something, and then they'll go back to Christmas things that feed the belly of this beast. They go back to doing the same things that help empower this white supremacy system, this race, you know, uh, institutionalized racism. We'll go right back. We'll protest it, but then we'll go back to feeding that same beast in the same manner that we was feeding it before we protested. There's another incident that happened, whether it's in Dallas with a bouncer or a bartender beating up a black woman. We get upset for a second and then we just go back to doing the things we were doing. We don't never learn from those experiences of saying, well, you know what, this is not going to be happening. I'm going to start arming myself, or we're going to start, doing whatever. It's never a movement of improvement to stop something that happened from happening again. We talk about our $1.7 trillion spending power, but we don't use that to stop the effects of white supremacy in this country. So we're like goldfish. We see something happen, we get a little upset or we get flustered or rattled, then we go right back to doing the same things that we were doing before that incident happened, whether it takes a week, 2 weeks, or a month, or 2 months, or whatever. Instead of letting all the information continue to compile. Last week, we were talking about potential energy. And if that was a bow, that stress on that bow and arrow, it should be pulling it back further and further and further until you can't take it anymore or hold it anymore. And you release all that kinetic energy, that potential energy, and turn it into kinetic energy, which should be a positive. But we don't do that. So to me, this is a paradise for those that created the system. This is a paradise with lots of goldfish in it. We have people, if we think about relationships, and this is the funny thing about it, when I'm on social media, I'm thinking about, I have groups that, people may invite me to groups, and a lot of it is people, they bitch and complain about things. And I see like on one of the groups, they talk about men and women and relationships and things like that. And they'll talk about, women, they'll talk about how sorry some black men are, a lot of black men are, and where are the real men at, and all of these things like that, because they've had a history of being damaged. They've had a history of having their heart broken, the promise of some man in their life, and they're all of those things they'll carry with them like luggage. And I hear the men say, you know what, I'm not that guy that did this to you, but you're carrying all this luggage from your last relationship. But that goes on with a lot of us when we talk about our experiences with each other. But we don't do that when we talk about our experiences in this country. We should be carrying around a whole lot of luggage from our relationship in this country. But we don't seem to do that. And that's what's kind of, I want to say it's ironic, we'll do that when it comes to each other. When I patronize a black business, and we'll say, well, I had a bad experience there, I'm not going back. Or when you're dealing with black people, it's like this. And this is black people talking about other black people. But when we look at our history in this country, we don't do that. We don't look at the bad history that we had under the red, white, and blue flag. When we look at Colin Kaepernick and his protesting and things like that, and NFL players, we don't relate to that. Many of us don't relate to that. It's like, well, he's doing that at his job. What you expect to happen? But when it comes to us, we look at things differently. We carry that luggage with us. We carry that luggage into our next relationship. We let that information compile. But when we're looking at this country and the long history that we've had in this country under that red, white, and blue flag, many of us will talk about the Confederate statues and the Confederate flags. And I would listen to Farrakhan talking about most of the things that's happened to black people happen under the red, white, and blue flag, the stars and stripes. We didn't need a Confederate flag. We get in an uproar about the Confederate flag, but a lot of the things that we've been through has come under this flag that we're pledging our allegiance to. I'd like to thank Wayne for showing up, and Tyron T. Springs. I appreciate you showing up, RC, and Mustafa Ali from the Mustafa Ali Show. I appreciate you showing up, and Derek, I appreciate you showing up, brother. So, you know, we'll carry luggage with us about each other, but we won't carry luggage about this country and the history that's happened to us in this country. We're like goldfish. We have a short memory. The things that happen, we don't let it compile. We don't let it, you know, build up. We tend to forget easily and quickly. Whether we're talking about hitting the polls and going for a certain party, and we've acquiesced to this system. I'm gonna use that word again. We've acquiesced to this system and play a part in this system, in some kind of, invest in some kind of hope in this system that might be the right candidate to come along and things will change. You know, make some kind of grand. Now, like my brother Mustafa Ali say, that's fine. I mean, we could chew bubble gum and walk at the same time. There's nothing wrong with investing in the system and having some kind of, I don't understand the hope that we put in the system, looking at our history, but it's okay to do that as long as you have something else that you're also trying to do. As long as you're investing in yourself. Like last week's show, we was talking about, you know, investing in our excellence, taking equity in Black excellence, and trying to perpetuate that idea to our kids to where it goes through generations, you know, beginning to believe in ourselves instead of letting others capitalize on our talents. And, you know, but we seem to want to acquiesce to the rules of the game that they set out for us. And they created this illustrious paradise or monopoly game where they're the ones in control of everything. And we go along with that game. You know, things are happening and we'll get a little flustered. We'll bitch and moan, complain, protest for a little bit, and not even hard enough, because we won't put that $1.7 trillion behind that or half of that behind it. We'll continue to do the same things like goldfish. And in this white paradise that I talk about in America, there's also flamingos out there. And I'm going to get into the flamingos. Let me finish with the treatment. I mean, and I'm going to give an example like this Mueller report. Now, I sat back and I've been hearing people talk about this Mueller thing. Now, our leaders, our political leaders, or a lot of these Democratic local leaders, you know, hey, this Mueller thing, Trump is in trouble, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's putting their hope in that. I don't see that anymore. The Mueller report came out. I don't see all of this, what was supposed to happen. You know, this storm that was supposed to happen, this, you know, Trump being led away in handcuffs. I don't see that. And where are those people at now? I mean, you put your hope in this system, and now it's actually like you have nothing to say, but now you're just going to have to wait till the elections to come. And that's what I see. That's what I'm sitting back looking at. And even and no matter what happens, you can start to extrapolate the outcome or the reaction of our people. And when you extrapolate, that means that you look at the information and the data and you draw the conclusion. That's what it means when you extrapolate. So I sit back and I can extrapolate, actually just sitting back watching a woman get beat up in Dallas by a white male. And the fuss that some people are going to have, but then we're going to turn around and keep doing the same thing that we were doing before that. Nobody's going to try to arm themselves or anything. If you notice, the guy, he pulled out a pistol. That's the first thing he did. Like I spoke about this last week, so I don't want to be redundant. So he must have a license to carry. That's power that he had over that person. Not just the male-female power thing, but also if anything else was going to jump off, if she tried to even the battle, he had his weapon ready. They didn't charge him with brandishing a weapon. They didn't charge him with that. So he must have had a license to have his weapon, and he didn't point it at her. So, you know, but you're not going to see people look at those videos and the videos before that when the guy got shot at the gas station by somebody who's provoking him. Or we're not looking at Zimmerman provoking someone and then shooting them. You know, they have that power, but we won't go and empower ourselves to try to even a battlefield. So it's like you can extrapolate the reaction that black people are going to have. And that's a beautiful thing when you talk about a white paradise. You have a people that you're basically dominating on all facets, and then they're acquiescing to your dominance. They won't actually put up a big fight. They'll forget about things. They'll continue to feed the system. You know, we're playing their game that's set up for us to fail and for them to stay on top. And not only are we doing that, but we're helping them to keep us down. You know, we're helping us to set up self-extermination. We do things to help, you know, whether we got youth joining gangs or people selling drugs or, you know, all the things that help deteriorate and destroy our own communities. We play a part in that. And then when we have people that's able to rise up in our communities, the first thing they do is abandon those communities and abandon the place where we can empower ourselves. So this is a wonderful paradise for those that's in power. And if black folks didn't exist, they would have to invent them because they would be necessary for them to carry on their system of racism, systemic racism, and white superiority, white supremacy, you know, because we play a part in that and we are ideal for that, you know. And I was thinking about how the difference between wolves and dogs, you know, even if we have shepherds and things like that, that look like a wolf and things like that, but there's a difference between wolves and dogs because I was looking at a show, like I think I mentioned this a while back, but even wolves that are tamed, what they call tamed, they're not really tamed, but they're brought up by people, raised by people as pups. The dog will even go against his own instincts to please his owner. That wolf still won't do that, even if he was raised by that person. And they did experiments to show that. They were showing the difference, the conditioning that's going into generation after generation after generation of us having these dogs and how far away they are from that wild wolf. That wild wolf will believe in his own skills, his own hunting skills before he'll believe in a human. And the experiment that they had a dog raised by people. They had a wolf that was raised by people. And they had a bowl with two bowls. And that treat, they took a piece of meat and they put it under the bowl. And the human would tell the dog, he'll put the meat under the bowl, and the dog visually seeing him put the meat up under one bowl, left on the right, then he'll point to it. Then they'll release the dog, and the dog will go to the bowl that the human pointed to, which he saw him put the meat in there. He could smell the meat also, and he'll go pick that bowl and you know, he'll eat the meat. And the wolf would do the same thing. But where they differed is that human will put the meat on the left side, but then point to the right side. And the dog went to the one that the human pointed to because he believed more in the human and relying on the human more than he believed in his own senses and abilities to smell and see. He saw where that person put that meat. He could smell the meat, but that person pointed to this bowl over here, so I'm still going to it. That wolf didn't do that. That wolf believed in itself. And that wolf's like, okay, yeah, you could point all you want, but I know where it's at and I'm going to get it. And that's what reminded me of us here, many of us here. We believe in the system more than we believe in ourselves. We believe in the system more than we want to take equity in our excellence. And this is something that we need to change. This is something that we need to change, not rely on somebody else to change for us because they're creating us. They invented us in this system. I used to hear Farrakhan say made in America. Yeah, they invented us. A lot of things that we talk about, our problems, the things that we complain about ourselves, we were made in America. And we continue to do the same things. And they just trained us and they set back. They don't have to train each generation because it becomes a generational thing. We continue to do the same thing and pass along those same things that we were trying to do. And then we forget even some things that happen that upset us. We tend to forget, like goldfish. But also in this paradise, there's flamingos. Like I mentioned, there's flamingos and goldfish. The flamingos are those that want to be seen. They want to put on a show. They want to have their tail feathers out. They want to impress others that's looking on. That's the title that I give those people that do this, the flamingos. You know, many of our people, we got to be flashy. We got to have that flash and dash. A lot of us will brag about that's our swagger. That's our swagger. But it's okay because you need those flamingos to exist in the paradise that is here in America for white supremacy, white superiority, systemic racism. You need flamingos. You need the goldfish, the people to forget, and that you continue to dominate them and do them wrong and acquiesce to the issues that's going on. We need those people. And we need those goldfish in the paradise. We need the flamingos. See, the flamingos, like, they got to be seen. They want to be ghetto fabulous. Many of us use that term, they're ghetto fabulous. Meaning these people, they live in the ghetto, they don't have anything, but they still will spend their money to be flashy and to be seen. They'll spend their money to get Jordans and even fight over each other over Jordans. When Black Friday comes, you see, or any time when they releasing a new Jordan, you'll see them people camping out. A lot of them people can't afford to have those type of things, but we afford them anyway, if that makes sense. We think because we can buy them that we can afford them, but actually we can't afford those things, not in the conditions that we are in. But we want to be ghetto fabulous. We want to buy cars and spend all this money making these cars, the paint jobs and the stereo systems, and buying cars that's really out of our budget. The maintenance on them is killing us and things like that, because we got to be flamingos. We got to be flashy. You know, we got to buy designer clothes. We got to buy jewelry, you know, and be seen. We want to buy designer handbags that really does nothing for us. Designer clothes that really does nothing for us. That doesn't help us to empower ourselves. And what I'm talking about is an economic strength. You know, to be seen, or be that person with the nice vehicle, or the nice rims on your vehicle, or the loudest stereo. Those things like that doesn't help us in the game that we're playing, this monopoly game that they set up. You know, it makes for paradise to be nice for them, as they watch us have money and have $1.7 trillion of spending power. And they watch and they probably sit back and chuckle at the things we do with that so-called spending power. I don't see it as spending power. It's not power if you don't use it. You know, in this paradise, you know, where we spend money on Jordans, you know, and matching Jordans. You see couples, they got match, all these kids, we buying Jordans for toddlers and kids and stuff like that. When I saw one of my partners said, you know, you spending all these money on this kid wearing Jordans to go to school, these little kids, and they sitting up admiring the kid that got the Spider-Man shoes on, you know, but that's what we do. Yeah, I'm reading a comment, and I'll go back. Teresa said predictability, and Derek said made in America. And Leslie, I appreciate you showing up, Leslie. She said flamingos. I like that. They do stand out. Yeah, they want to stand out, and they stand out for them wolves to get them, you know. And that's not even an important part to me about the flamingos. To see the flamingos, Jordan and Nike, they made $3.1 billion revenue in 2017. the numbers came in 2017. They made, that's Jordan and Nike. Jordan got about $100 million of that, you know, but Nike off of the Jordan brand, that whole thing together, that's 3.1 billion that they made off of them. But we continue to invest in Jordan. Don't do anything for our communities. I mean, he's a billion. He doesn't do anything for our community. We made the Jordan shoes popular. People say, well, Jordan made the Jordan shoes popular. Jordan didn't make those shoes popular. People look at what we wear. We made those shoes fashionable. Those are the only things, like if an athlete is because who he was, making his own product popular, he does that when he's playing. But we latched on to those, and we continue to latch on to it. And whatever we deem as popular, that's what everybody else is going to follow. You know, so then, and I'm gonna look at another thing, you know, we need those things for self-worth. Those things make us feel good about ourselves. But who are you feeling good about? Who are you trying to show off to? I saw a store yesterday over the weekend, and on the other side of town, I can't even think of the name of the brand name store, but I was looking at boots in there. They had boots in there that was $1,400. That's what them people wear. That's what them people shop at. I can't think of the name of the store, and I'm looking at Prada, Gucci, all of these things like that. They got shoes, like it ain't the same thing. That they don't buy the same things we buy to look flashy and dashy, but we'll spend a lot of money and think we're doing something, spending $200 on shoes. I saw $850 sandals in this store. And I'm like, and I'm seeing people shopping in there. Not too many people look like us, but I'm seeing people shopping there. But that just thinking about how we try to be flamingos, and you got people that have real money, that's spending real money, and that's probably doing things with their money, but we're stretching ourselves out, trying to be flamingos, you know. Then in this paradise, you know, if black people didn't exist, black folks didn't exist, you probably would have to invent them, because that would make paradise even more just a better place to be. I mean, if you don't have to put up with people actually getting pissed off at the things you're doing to them, and if they did get pissed off, they're not going to do too much. I mean, if you think of a couple, or the husband, abusive husband, if he could come home and do whatever he want to do to his wife abusively, hit her, beat her, whatever, and then she just get upset for a little while and everything is okay. He stay out all night, come back home, she'll fuss about it, everything is okay. That got to be, for him, that's ideal. You know, that's got to be ideal. And that's how I see us being, you know. If that person didn't exist, then you probably have to invent that person to make things great in paradise. You know, that if you could tell of people, some of the most beautiful people in the world, the most beautiful women in the world, you know, and you could convince them that they're not beautiful, so much so that it's in their mind that they want to spend $433 million a year on just trying to keep their hair up, when their hair is naturally beautiful. But we spend $433 million a year on hair products because somebody else convinced us that our hair is ugly in its natural state. They've done an incredible job, and they've created a beautiful paradise for themselves because they got someone that's playing their role in that paradise. And the hair industry for Black people is a $4.2 billion industry that they've convinced us that we have to have money set aside to convince, or to convince ourselves that our hair needed something to look better, when we have hair like no one else in this world. But we look at that as a curse instead of a blessing. We have skin like nobody else in this world. We have skin that react to the sun like nobody else in this world. We have skin, like they say, black don't crack, like no one else in this world. It ages differently, protects us from the sun differently. But the people with the most melanin in their skin are put down by the people in their own race, color struck. We've been convinced of what beauty is. You know, we still, and many of us that will say those terms and speak those terms off our lips are what good hair. And if you ever say good hair, question yourself on what is good hair. What is that hair like? What is the hair that we call good hair? What hair is that? What is the texture of that hair? Is it a texture that we have naturally? Is it the more black, the ones that's closer to being and from the motherland, or is it hair that's looking like those people that's telling us or giving us a standard of beauty? So you question yourself on that, the job that they've done, and the point or the part that you played in that self-worth. You know, that money that we want to spend to be flamingos, we're not investing that in our property. We're not investing that to own any property. We're not investing that in businesses. We're spending money, some of that $1.7 trillion spending, as we say, power. We're not empowering ourselves with any property, any businesses, education-wise. We're not investing that in our black colleges, the HBCUs. We're not doing any of that. What we rather do is become flamingos and goldfish. And the flamingos, the crazy thing about it, the flamingos that sit up there and spend all that money on Black Friday. It's like you want to be a flamingo with the memory of a goldfish, and forget all the things and who you're buying. Because all the stuff that we're buying to be flamingos is nothing that's black owned. If I wanted to be flashy, dashy, whatever, with all this swag and have this bag or whatever, shoes, and I'm not spending it on us to look flashy and dashy, I got to spend it on some Italian designer that don't care anything about my people. That's crazy. And if I was spending money on my hair or my hair care, and it was black people or African people that was profiting from it, that'd be something different. But the main people that's profiting from us on our hair products is the Indian and the Chinese people. That's amazing. If black people didn't exist, if black folks didn't exist, you'd have to invent them. You have to invent them. You have to invent somebody to do the things that we do to keep the people that want to oppress us in power. We're helping them to oppress us. And that's an ideal situation. I looked at a sign yesterday. I was on 35. And it said, go to college, get a job. That's all the sign said, a big old billboard. And I had a person on there putting on a, cap and gown. Go to college, get a job. And that's the thing that we perpetuate generation after generation to our kids. Do this, get a job. Do this, get a job. Not go there and create a job or create a business for yourself. We don't do that. I'm going to read a comment. Derek said, we have been programmed to pick the clean white doll. Yeah, I've seen those things. Everything white is right and all that stuff like that. That's the mindset. And that's how it was. It's like I said, to go to college and get a job. That's the idea that we have in a black community. You go get a job. Who you gonna get a job from? You go into college, most of us are spending all this money to go to college, getting student loans. But we got to pay these PWIs. That's a primary white institution. You pay these people these astronomical amounts. They're putting all this interest on your loan just to go to school to learn for them, and then turn around and then you're in debt to them, and then you turn around and got to beg them for a job. And if you look at the employment rate of college students, how many of those college students that's really going out there and not getting a job that their white counterparts are getting? And that's because, of course, they're controlling the employment. We're going to them and asking for jobs. And I mean, like I said, we're feeding into a system. We should be going to college and creating our own businesses. We should be going to college and creating jobs for ourselves and hiring other students that's going to college years after you. But we're not doing that. We're going to college not to get a job. We're going to college basically begging for a job when we get out. It's not that they need you. They don't need you. When you get out, you're not doing anything that anybody needs you for, because it's a lot of their kids that's getting that same education, that same degree, and they're getting hired at a higher rate. So we're playing into this monopoly game. You know, if black people didn't exist, you would have to, if black folks didn't exist, you would have to invent them, because they're idea for the paradise that is here in America. We keep buying into the voting thing, and voting is going to change everything. And we buying into the politics. And I'm not saying don't buy, don't invest into the politics. On a small scale, that is important. But things are not changing like they should be changing. Things are not changing the way they should be changing, because with the excellence that we have, we could run the ball for them. And if you look at the NCAA March Madness that's going on now, you look at all these schools, these PWIs, universities, all these black kids running and jumping and doing all these things with all their athleticism and skills. And you look up at the crowd, at all those people that's cheering these kids on. If you look at the NCAA football championship, all these, at all these positions, all these kids out there, predominantly black kids performing for these white schools, getting them national championships, things like that, chasing a dream of being in the NBA and the NFL, getting all this money for these universities. A lot of them won't make it to the NFL or the NBA. But that's an ideal situation for the paradise that we exist in. But we're not enjoying that paradise. They're enjoying the paradise. It's their paradise. But that's an ideal situation from them. And they deem that necessary. And if we wasn't there, they would have to invent black people or black folks. Because I distinguish black folks from black people. Black people are all around the world. But black folks is what I'm saying is here in America. Black folks are the ones that acquiesce to the system, the systemic racism. Black folks are the ones that turn their back or forget, like goldfish, after they get upset about something happening. And 3 weeks later, they go about their business as if nothing happened at all. Those are the goldfish and the flamingos that's making paradise a beautiful place to live. You know, we have to reinvent black folks. Now, I didn't just come on here to just talk about or down black people or down our actions, because like I said, we have some excellence like no one else has shown in this world from what we've been through. But if we don't remember what we've been through when we're going about our day trying to change things, then it doesn't matter. You know, that wife that's sitting home with black eyes, and she had black eyes last year, and she don't remember it. All she remembers is the last incident. And then she's going to soon forget that. She's going to be there tomorrow. She's going to be there next week. She's going to be there next month, taking the same abuse. But at a point, when if you remember what's happening, and that person just says, well, things are going to change. Things are going to change. And you look back into history and say, you know what, you've been saying that for the last 5 years. We as black people have been saying that for the last 100 years. With our leaders being murdered. And they're saying, yeah, remember Martin Luther King. Yeah, I remember what happened to Martin Luther King. I remember y'all punching him in the face and stuff when he was marching. I remember how the news were broadcasting those things like that. I remember how politicians wasn't standing up and trying to eradicate racism. They just try to soothe it over. I remember that when I remember Malcolm X or Martin Luther King or Medgar Evers. That's what I remember. I remember how change is coming slowly. I remember how those people were fighting for some of the same things that we're fighting for. It's just the game has changed. The board is little, it's a newer game. You know, they changed the parts in the Monopoly board, but it's still the same game being played the same way. So I remember. And what we need to do, like I was saying, we need to reinvent Black folks in this country. That's um, my answer to the problem. We've been invented. Black, this is made in America. Everything that we're going through, when we're talking about our issues between us that we remember so well, but we forget our issues with them, the ones that's creating our issues within us or helping to create it because we're doing our part. We're accepting the role. But we have to reinvent Black people. We have to start reinventing Black people. We have to start showing our kids the flamingos in our community. We need to expose the goldfish. Those people that have short memories, call them out on that. You know, call them out on that. Because sometimes people would do that with their girlfriend. They'll be like, girl, you're doing the same thing that you was doing before. I don't want to hear it. And that's how we need to treat some of us. That's you know, griping the same way for the same things, but not doing anything about it. You know, you going to do what for yourself this time? You're tired of this. Now what you going to do? You said you was tired of this last week. You said you was tired of this last month. I don't even want to hear about because you don't do anything. That's what we need to call each other out on. We need to call some of our leaders out on this. You know, this is what the point is, because it's a beautiful place that these people live in. That they could get away with so much, that the police departments can get away with so much, that the government can get away with so much. And all we do is sit back and complain about Trump. But then we're going to be talking about the next thing he said and not what he did, you know. And all of that stuff is just diverting our attention. And we need to pay attention to us and the part that we play or our plan in paradise. And that's the show this week, y'all. I hope it was better than last week. And hopefully next week I'll have a better show for y'all. I thank y'all for tuning in. Peace.